to call to order the Public Works and Safety Committee meeting of Wednesday, May 2nd, 2018. The first item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda. Moved by Councilwoman Manti, second by Councilman Y. Any discussion or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 2 is public input. This is the time for the public to state their concern. Is there anyone here that would like to bring up a concern? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Item number 3 is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion and second for approval? Moved by Councilman Lallam, second by Councilwoman Manti. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 4 is the Lake Campesca Master Plan RFP. And yes, I can introduce this item. The Lake Campesca Master Plan is a project in the 2018 budget for planning out the what we can do at Lake Campesca in terms of all the different projects that we're contemplating, and access, water quality, flood control, all those sort of things. And so we issued an RFP, and there's a very large committee of concerned citizens and a smaller group of about a dozen people reviewed proposals from 4 different agencies, and actually every single one of them was a partnership of 2 or more companies joining together. And the selection committee has recommended award of the contract to Confluence in conjunction with Infrastructure Design Group and AE2S. And I should point out that the budget for this project is $50,000, and the work is estimated by the consultant to be about $79,000 and change, about $80,000. Plus, we think there will be some expenses from within our staff. So we are looking for some contribution from the Lake Campesca Water Project District, who told me beforehand that they would look at helping us out if we didn't have enough money in the budget to do this. So they are meeting on Monday to consider a request for them to contribute $35,000, and I can't say at this time whether they will approve that or not. So you might want to include that in a motion as a contingency if you need to. Otherwise, this money the extra money will have to come out of the contingency fund to pay for the remaining part if we enter into a contract with Confluence for this project. And we can't just take the money from the water district and put it in this fund. So we take the money out of the contingency fund.
I'd make the motion that we approve this with the potential $35,000 coming from is the Lake Campesca Water District. Water Project District. If not, having to come out of our contingency fund if it's available. Okay.
Is there a second? Second motion by Lallam and second by Danforth. Questions or yes?
The $35,000. This is a consulting of all the groups, essentially trying to put together a master plan. Is that what we're looking at? Okay. Is there additional funds that are available state-wise through Water District, anything like along those lines? I know we moved. This is the one we moved up, right?
No, this is a new project for 2018.
Okay.
And it is in the budget, but it's only $50,000. Right. We haven't had this in the budget in the past. Okay. We saw some really exciting ideas at the presentation. This company, Confluence, did the downtown Sioux Falls riverfront master plan, and Vanessa's here. Do you know how long ago their master plan was done for downtown Sioux Falls? They've been picking away at the projects from that master plan, and it's spectacular what they're doing in downtown Sioux Falls.
Yeah, I do believe that they've been working on it for well over 10 years. It's still ongoing. In fact, I have a project with them right now that we're revising the master plan because I'm throwing a kink in the works. But, you know, having a living document and something to grow off of is huge. Confluence is also very good at their visualizations, so you can literally see what is happening and the overall goal, which I find beneficial.
Would this be a revolving document as well, as far as if something changes down the road, that
Yeah.
it can be updated and or changed depending on our situation and what happens?
Yeah.
Okay.
That is the overall goal.
That's the plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Confluence also did a master plan for the Mississippi River in St. Cloud, Minnesota. So, I mean, it's just, when you see those documents, you want that. I want that for Lake Kempeska. It's very exciting. Councilman Danforth?
Mayor, the other people that had made presentations, how did their total bid?
This was in the
Correlate
middle.
to
It
the
wasn't
80.
the highest and it wasn't the lowest.
Okay.
Those, yeah. I don't have those numbers.
Did
right off the top of my
you
head.
see anything that one presented that the others didn't, that may have brought some
Confluence
light to?
dotted lots more I's and crossed more T's than the other ones. They actually hit every point very strongly, and I think the planning element of their approach is what did it, as opposed to a more engineering approach, which was, I mean, what we're looking for is a vision document that can help us see what we can potentially do. And the fisheries element of it was very unique from their presentation compared to the other ones. And they have a professor at SDSU that will be partnering with them to come up, and some of the ideas that they had a little eyebrow thing that for using dredgings to form sculpting to create fisheries habitat. And they actually in their presentation described Lake Kempeska as a fisheries desert, I think is the term they used. But they said we can fix that. And they had some ideas, which is nice.
Lori, can you read back the, excuse me, the motion that we voted on? I don't think I heard, or I'm confused on it a little bit, and that's my fault.
To approve Confluence with the contingency that Lake Kempeska Water Project District can contribute $35,000, otherwise coming out of the contingency.
So it will, it could come out of the contingency fund, or could, or not.
It will come out of the contingency fund.
No.
It has to, right?
Can I make
Yes.
just one point of clarification? No, regardless of Lake Kempeska Water doing any type of contribution to the project, the council will have to approve the contingency transfer because we can't offset an expenditure with a revenue. So, so regardless, the contingency transfer would have to happen, but the contribution would be the revenue coming in.
Yeah,
So.
excuse me, my concern was that he said not come out of the contingency.
No, he said it would.
It would.
It
That-
would come out of that was part of his motion.
Right, because my second question to that would be, okay, then what would we do if it didn't? We didn't get the money, would it come back? You know, it's
It
the
would
more,
come out of the contingency fund, and we'll find a way to do it.
yeah, so that was moot. I thank you for helping a confused old lady, so.
Thank you for the clarification, Beth. Any other questions, Councilman Vilhauer?
And that work would be done for the most part in calendar 2018 yet? I
That
mean,
was, their schedule did show that they would be done around the end of the year. And I don't think that's a deal breaker. The firms were given an open-ended, and they all went, around that end of the year time frame. Nobody was $50,000 or less, by the way. I think the lowest one was 68,000. So, any other comments or questions? All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 5 is consideration of change order number 2 in the amount of $33,553.78 for the wastewater treatment facility digester rehabilitation project number 1612. And I'll look for a motion and second, and then we'll have Shane tell us what this is. Moved by Councilman Y, second by Councilwoman Manti. Okay, Shane?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a project at the wastewater treatment plant. They're rehabilitating the 2 digester structures. This is work on structure number 1, which was primarily completed last construction season, and we've been working on some extra work items over the winter, and this is the result of that. What we found was on the fixed digester roof, when the structure was originally built, there's what they call a mill scale on steel. It's a byproduct of them creating the steel originally, and most often that's sandblasted off before you put any coatings on it. For whatever reason, and we don't have that documentation was never presented in the past. When that was built, the mill scale was still on that steel, and then they coated over the top of it. So that was part of the issue. The other part of the issue is when they did coat over the top of it, they coated over the top with about 3 times the normal amount of paint product. So in essence, it created extra work on this project to sandblast off all the extra materials, all the extra paint, all the mill scale, and it took about an extra week to do all that work. So this is a change order that's been negotiated through our consultant and through wastewater staff, and I'm presenting it before you. It does include 7 days of extension on the liquidated damages for that phase 1 portion of the project, and it is in the increased cost is $33,553.78, and staff has approved that, and the funding, of course, comes out of the Burgers Capital at the wastewater. So,
And there's sufficient money in.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Any other questions or comments, Councilman Lallam?
Shane, do we know when this was originally done? When that cover was done?
I believe it was in the late 1980s or 1990 was the last time some work was done here. I don't know what date the original structure was built.
Obviously, prior to that, then. So this is a long-term deal. So okay.
Mid-'80s was the original.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just something that was missed or wasn't an issue at that time, most likely.
Wasn't caught.
Yeah.
I'll call it that.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 6 is discussion of 20th Avenue Bridge Preservation Project number 1709. And are we looking for action on this, or is this just discussion? I see Vanessa's here.
Mostly discussion, but we can give staff a direction on how to engage South Dakota DOT staff on this bridge. I'll let Vanessa explain it in more detail.
Okay, Vanessa Victor from Infrastructure Design Group.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your time. Basically, in a nutshell, is we've stirred some emotions at the DOT with the 20th Avenue Preservation Project. As it turns out, when we had applied for the big grant, internally they had a lot of debate about the approach for preservation. And just to refresh your memory, we are doing an epoxy deck seal to preserve the deck of that bridge that was built in 2010. Come to find out that during the actual construction, there was some design issues that have led to some flaws in the bridge over time. And they thought that they had rectified some of them during the construction, but that was not necessarily the case. So we applied for epoxy deck seal, which is $250,000 as a big grant. And they were debating whether or not they wanted to do that or overlay project to fix the ride of the bridge. There's some excess camber in your girders that when you drive over the 4 spans, you can feel every single span. When it was constructed, that camber was only a half an inch more in each of the spans, and by 3 weeks ago, it has grown to almost 3 inches. So it is a bumpy ride across the bridge. And now that we are to the bidding portion, we're still revisiting whether or not we want to fix the ride across the bridge or just preserve the deck itself. Typically, overlays are more expensive. You're looking at $750,000 to $1 million to overlay this bridge. And then on top of it, generally because the camber does grow over time, it started at a half an inch and we're at 3 inches now, that you want to make sure that camber has stopped growing before you do an overlay because it could still wind up with a bumpy road. So we've had multiple discussions with the DOT, and I have to say that they're taking this very seriously. Both the head of road design, bridge design, local government assistant, and the Secretary of Transportation have all weighed in on this topic. And they are presenting 3 options for the city. And that, I don't know if you can see this.
Put the overhead on.
Vanessa, can I ask a question real quick? To go back to something you said, is this a design issue? Is it a manufacturing or a construction issue?
It was a design issue at the onset of the bridge, and it was a calculation error that wasn't caught until literally they were pouring the deck. And they tried to rectify it as much as they could in the field, and it just couldn't get rectified.
I have a question. How does the camber grow?
So your beams are your main supporting members, and these are pre-stressed concrete beams. And you pretension the steel, and then as that beam continues to gather strength, it creeps up. That's literally the term, and your beam will just slowly move forward. Usually not this much.
So it's kind of the
camber
arch is arching more.
Arching more, yes. And we do take that into account for original design. It's in all of the deck form elevations before you pour a bridge. But this did turn out to be a design calculation in the original deck form elevations, which is why we're having these issues today.
Vanessa, how long does it take for that to fully finish?
It's creep is theoretical, so it's hard to literally pinpoint. Concrete in general is theoretical. You know, what's 4,000 psi concrete and 6,000 psi? It's some magical formula, but 3 inches of growth is a lot. I would say that
this was
we're nearing the end.
2010?
2010, it's 8 years old.
So in 8 years, it's not going to go like another 6 inches, is it? I mean, we're
No,
going to have ramps in there?
It
or-
shouldn't. I could see it still go another inch, though.
So every time it moves, if we overlay it, it's going to crack the asphalt.
It shouldn't crack the asphalt, but you will notice it in your ride.
So we could be stripping that back off and doing it a couple years down the road.
Yes.
He's saying if you do the $1 million overlay in a couple years, it will crack off because it's not done creeping. And
It's not necessarily going to crack off, but you'll feel the uneven ride. Theoretically, the best process is to wait at least 20 years until you know that the camber growth is officially done, and then that's when you would do an overlay.
But we need to do something to fix it now.
It's an option to do something to fix it. And truth be told, the DOT is torn 50-50. Everybody that I've talked to, half are believe that we should be doing an overlay, and the other half come from an epoxy deck seal. is the way to go. Let the camper continue. They did come back with, I said, 3 options. The first is to sign an agreement with the DOT that they will fix it. We'll continue with the epoxy deck seal as planned. And in 15 years, they'll do an overlay. I put on some pros and cons and just some pondering thoughts in the middle. But pros are, it does fix any additional camber growth that would happen in that time. Who knows, in another 15 years, if there was an accident on the bridge that needs to be repaired, or if you have a large flood and you have some embankment issues, it would be behooving to capitalize on low mobilization and a bridge contractor already being on the site. The biggest thing with a bumpy ride on a bridge, other than us driving across it, it does add to the service life of the bridge. It's rough, and it increases the impact every time your tires hit. It's 50 miles an hour out there, and it really kind of comes down to a cyclical loading that increases fatigue, which are all terms, and fatigue really has nothing to do with the concrete, but it has to do with the steel in the concrete. But the nice thing is we are still protecting that with an epoxy deck seal, and that was the whole premise of this project in the first place. The bad thing is you have the bumpy ride for 15 years and staff changes. We're lucky that this is such a hot button issue because 10 years ago, the people that are higher up at the DOT were on this job site and remember it. But in another 15 years, whether or not you will all be here, I will be here, but
Dan Forth will be here.
Dan Forth will still be here. But guaranteed, the people at the DOT will probably change.
Do you want to go through the 3 and then we can come back to maybe some of these, maybe?
The other thing, we can scrap the epoxy deck seal and just do the overlay right now. It's highly, rough estimate of costs. You're $800,000 to $1 million to do that. Or you can sign an agreement with the DOT that they will write you a check now that you can do 15 years down the road when the epoxy deck seal has run its course.
They'd pay for the epoxy and write us a check?
Well, you are governed in on your big grant. That's a really good point, Adam. So we applied for the big grant, and that's where all the emotions came from, because I'd love to fix the ride of the bridge if they were going to pay for the extra amount of money. But even as it stands, if we bid it tomorrow and we get a high bid, everything over that grant amount comes out of the city's pocket. So if we fix it today without an agreement with the DOT to do anything about the ride, that all comes out of the city pocket.
Councilman Danforth.
So option 1 that you laid out was that the DOT will agree to fix it. We would do the epoxy fill, or what do you call that, and then 15 years from now they would fix it.
Yes.
Is that contractual, so that as these people come and go and as the DOT people come and go, that they're still obligated to that?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, you'd want a pretty darn good contract.
I would say a very good contract.
To make that. In my opinion, for whatever it's worth, option 1 is actually your best option. I'm not a fan of option 3, even though you get a check right now, but who knows where that money goes. There are always new construction methods that are coming up. Our infrastructure is in crisis. It's all failing. But there's new design methodologies that are going into it. So 15 years down the road, we might not be even talking about a low sump overlay. Maybe there's something way better that would pertain exactly to this bridge that would be cheaper or more expensive. You also have a cost of inflation. And then end of the day, we're all tied to how many contractors there are available that do this type of work.
Are there any safety issues to this as this goes from a 1/2 inch to 3 inch to 4 inches to, are there safety issues?
No. I mean, it's not ideal on the ride. We do have some ponding, which we will try to fix with the epoxy deck seal. But the only major safety issue would be the ponding and the dips right now that could cause hydroplaning. But other than that, the bridge is functioning, and it's not a safety detriment. It's an inconvenience on your ride.
Councilman Lawler?
So Vanessa, on that number 1 there, we would pay to overlay, or they would pay to overlay it?
They would pay to.
They would pay to overlay it.
Whatever the cost.
Who would pay the epoxy then?
That would be governed by the grant that you have right now.
Okay.
And that grant is $217,000 that the DOT is already paying.
Okay.
And it's 65, but that is, I mean, you agreed to let the project locally, so you cover all the upfront costs, and then they reimburse you after the fact.
So we would get that taken care of, and then we'd have to have a contract in place that they would, 15 years down the road, they would basically overlay it.
Yep.
Okay.
To go through these, I agree with you on the check now thing. You know, it's a carrot, but I don't think it's the right way to go. I look at option 2. If this thing's still going to be potentially adjusting itself or moving, it doesn't seem like it'd be appropriate to do that now. It seems like we'd be throwing money after something that we don't know what it's going to end up with. So it seems like option 1 is our way to go. I don't see where the other 2 options really are a good option for us.
Not to speak directly for the DOT, but in our conversation, they did indicate that that's their preference is option 1.
Any other? I think it would be good to get one.
I'd make a recommendation that we move to accept the first option on there. Obviously, we need more information and things like that, but that would be my recommendation.
Okay.
The staff to move forward with that.
Okay. A motion
Develop
from
some sort of a
Councilman Lawler.
contract.
Yep. And yes, with a contract. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Danforth. Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries.
Mayor, can I just make
Thank
a
you,
comment?
Vanessa.
I just got back from Italy, and we crossed a bridge that was over 2,000 years old.
Wow.
Seriously, and
They don't make 'em like they
it's
used to.
still is in use.
Guacamole.
It's unbelievable. You sit there and you think about that, over 2,000 years
That is
old.
one reason I would love to go there.
Yeah.
Let's see that.
Italy is pretty cool because if they're doing construction and they find an old something, they just stop and like put a fence around it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like there's a big hole in the ground. It's
I wanna
kind of
see the
cool.
aqueducts too. Okay. Item number 7 is discussion of proposed Highway 81 speed limit change. Shane?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. This is just informational only. You recall, the city previously had asked for a corridor study on the speed limits on Highway 81 coming in from the south into the community, and their initial reaction was that they weren't interested in changing the speed limit, but they did ultimately take a look at it. And really, the speed limit change is, I'll say, independent of the construction of the roundabout, but certainly the roundabout impacts the overall speed that goes through this corridor. So just to recap, what's existing out there now is right here's the multicultural center south of town, and the radio tower right there. Right where these 2 arrows come together is where the change from 65 miles an hour to 50 miles an hour happens. And then that 50 mile an hour speed continues until right here next to the Super 8 Hotel, and I don't remember what's on the west side there. I think it's the part of the John Deere dealership. So that's where it changes from 50 to 35. So as a result of their review, what they did is they increased the distance south of town, approximately proposing to change the speed limit 70 feet south of the driveways of that multicultural center. And that's where the transition from 65 to 45 will happen. And the 45 then would continue as the official speed up until that same point by the Super 8 and John Deere. Then it would transition to the existing speed of 35 miles an hour. Now, there is no official posted speed for the roundabout, but the roundabout will cause a further reduction in speed for all traffic so that they can safely negotiate the roundabout. So I believe that the DOT has at least listened to the city and has made some adjustment in the speed limit based on our request, and I think it will help slow down traffic. Two advantages: we're slowing down the traffic a little sooner before it gets to the roundabout, and I think it also decreases the I always call it the sense of racing. When you come off of the intersection light at Highway 212 and 81, if you're in opposing lanes, if you're trying to jockey for position to get down to the intersection to go through the roundabout, there's a tendency that people kind of not intentionally race each other to the destination. But anyway, this will be a traffic calming effort, in my opinion, and I think the reduced speeds will lend itself up for a much safer and more functional roundabout, because they'll be slowing down instead of coming at that, from a different speed point.
Thank you, Shane. Councilman Danforth?
My only concern is that we create it seems like it's a drastic move going from 65 to 45 when there's nothing down there farther to the south. I don't want to create what in essence becomes a speed trap, because there's literally very little out there that from a traffic standpoint of coming in and out of off the road that is going to create any significant problems for us. It seems like going from 65 to 45 is a bigger step than is necessary. Are these our recommendations, or is this what they came back with?
This is DOT.
You see where the roundabout will be, and nobody's going to be going through that roundabout at 45.
Well,
no,
and they
I
won't.
get it, but they also when you're coming from the north to the south for the next whatever that is mile, almost a mile, they're going to drive 45, and that seems. It seems like what's going to feel like is a speed trap.
It's not a mile though.
It's 0.93 miles, isn't that what it says?
No,
oh no, I'm sorry. No.
That's
yeah. The whole distance. But it's I don't know. That's just my comments when I looked at it. It feels like from the roundabout to the south, like that speed limit is too low.
I will just say this about the DOT's methods that they use to make these determinations. They're more scientific than emotional, and what you're describing is an emotional response to what's going on here, and I think you might be challenged in convincing them with that argument when they have numbers and traffic counts and formulas into figuring out what they're doing. But I mean, if you want to challenge this,
I don't disagree, but then I have to ask why we even asked for input.
You're not. This is information.
Well, now I feel good about things.
They're not asking for your input. They're telling you.
Is this like just an FYI? Here's what's coming.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Then I think I got better things to do.
It's ironic, Mike. I agree with you on this. By the same token, John, I think you know where I'm going with this. I've talked to DOT staff about West 212, where we go from 65 to 45. That's that's an area where that 45 should be extended out further beyond the event center than what it is. And I've got nowhere. They said, well, no, that's metered right out there. So it's ironic that they're proposing dropping this when I can cite a better area where I think it should be dropped.
Councilwoman Mantee.
Well, I can add to emotions, but also speak to reality. What's the distance between the true distance between the roundabout and where it drops or starts back up to 65? I can't tell.
Less than a half a mile,
Less than half a mile. Okay.
I guess.
My parents live, or my mom lives in a town that has 150,000 roundabouts. Okay. So, yeah. No, they have triple roundabouts, literally. What I can tell you is as you come in from 212 and you're starting to get towards that roundabout, you're going to start slowing down in that area fairly quickly because you're anticipating getting into this roundabout and you may have to either yield or you're going to get all the way around. That being said, when you come out of the roundabout, you're probably going about 15 miles an hour. And by the time you get up to where it would be 65, it would take you that long to get to 65. I mean, and I know that from experience that you can't, in that short a distance, after you get out of a roundabout, unless you stomp on it and have a Camaro, you are not going to immediately get to that speed limit.
And they're not going to have a speed limit for northbound and a different speed limit for southbound, so.
Right, and that applies to both directions because the people coming from the south are also going to slow down.
I can guarantee they included that in their analysis.
See how smart I am?
Yeah.
Yeah, their goal is to hit the 80th percentile of traffic.
Yeah.
So they anticipate 80% of the people are going to travel this speed regardless if it's posted or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nothing.
Yep.
That is the 0.3 of a mile. It would take, I mean, a semi wouldn't even
Won't
get
be able
close
yeah.
to be able to. And even in my car, I would not get back to that speed limit in 0.3 of a mile. And I know I have a Ford, but no, I think my husband bought me this one because I am two-head lead foot. But
So do they need a recommendation on this?
No.
No.
Okay.
This was just information.
'Cause it's gonna-
the council.
It's going to get approved, and I'm going to get a ticket there, and I'm going to be mad. I have a lead foot.
yeah, but you'll slow down.
No.
I
You've
wanted
been
to
told.
present this because the council actually asked for a speed reduction previously, and this is what's come out of
Yep.
it. So.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, item number 8 is relocation of sanitary sewer main at Big Sioux River for the Highway 212 Phase 1 project number 1802. And Shane, are you looking for a recommendation on this?
No, this is more of an informational topic too, because really
Okay.
we don't have any choice. I hate to use those words, but throughout the Phase 1 project for Highway 212 construction between Highway 20 and Highway 81, we've been working with the DOT for well over a year on the scope and the design of this project. And all along, the city has said that no, that we don't want to do any additional work to our sanitary sewer, nor do we don't need to do any work to our sanitary sewer. And so we didn't anticipate any project coming out of this. But here at the 11th hour, as the design for the Phase 1 project is nearing completion this summer and fall, and they intend to bid that project in late fall, November, going into next year's project, they've identified that there's going to be a conflict between the new bridge structure that they're proposing and our existing sanitary sewer. So right now, the sanitary sewer is a 21-inch concrete pipe that goes right along the edge of Highway 212, and for some reason, they were able to build this bridge deck and the foundations and everything without disrupting the 21-inch line. Now, there is a chance that they built the 21-inch line or rebuilt the 21-inch line in conjunction with that bridge when it was built. But I don't have that documentation, so I can't say that for sure one way or the other. However, the new bridge is anticipated to impact the 21-inch line, so they're asking the city to redirect the sanitary sewer, and we've just kind of taken a stab at some ideas here. The purplish magenta line here is where we would possibly redirect, and there's other utilities in here. That's why I'm out as far as I am. There's a high pressure gas line, there's fiber optic lines, there's other power and telecommunication stuff in there. Now, one option that isn't shown on here that we might do this yellow line is an option on this end, and we may do the same thing on the west end where we do an angled thing, and that's to help flow through the pipe so that there isn't as much turbulence and disruption through the manholes. Now, this is a main collector, or not even a collector, it's a main interceptor that converts or conveys all of the wastewater from the lake and all parts west of Highway 20 come through this. So it's a high volume line. And ideally, the DOT told me that they would like us to relocate this year, and I haven't ruled that out yet, but this has some significant permitting challenges. All of this land that you see that this is occupying on is land that's owned by the railroad. So that's a minimum of a month to get a permit to cross or to negotiate your things with the railroad. Then you're crossing the river, which is going to require a higher scrutiny from the DENR and the Corps of Engineers. One other thing that I do know about this is that DOT believes that, at least in the location of the bridge here, that the river channel is almost as deep as the pipe. So there is potential that we have pipe laying at or very near to the bottom of the river channel. And what that will mean is it will have to have additional casing or armoring of the structure so that it doesn't get washed out during a high velocity flood event. And so there's a few challenges, and I'm very disappointed that we're getting this information literally months away from finishing design, because had we known this a year ago, we could have had time to get all this stuff in line. And now we're looking at a very fast design scope. I don't have any solid answers for you. I wanted you to know that this was coming and that this is a get her done quick type of scenario. The municipal utilities has a project where they hired infrastructure design group to design new water mains through this exact corridor. And because they already have design sheets kind of laid out for this project, I am going to try to negotiate a design fee from IDG to design this sanitary sewer and pursue the permits for it. The city really doesn't have a choice. Wastewaters are going to have to probably dig into their contingency funds or capital funds of some sort to try to get this done. And my goal is to either find out if a construction project is possible in 2018 and get it done, or if we can coordinate and get it included in the set of plans that would be constructed in 2019 with the DOT project. That's our two options. I'm trying to figure out in a very short period of time which option is going to work the best for the community. And I don't have that answer right now today, but I felt that you folks as the governing body should know what we're facing here.
Shane, I got a question for you, just to plead a little bit of ignorance. How are we going underneath the river?
Yes.
Yes.
So we're going to have to block off the river, dig it out, run our pipe or whatever we're running, and then, or are they going to bore underneath it?
We'll have to explore all those options. I'm a little concerned about trying to bore it, because if that is saturated sediment in the bottom, you won't successfully bore through that, because it'll collapse just as fast as you try to force a hole through it. So we'll have to really vet that. I'm thinking we may have to build a cofferdam, redirect the river during low flow, and dig across real quick and then open it back up. Now, good news in Watertown, at least in July, August, the Big Sioux River some years has virtually no flow, but
it's higher this year than it's been in years.
18 could be a different story. That's exactly right. And so that's all of the things that we have to think about and consider here going forward.
Just remember, your house is like 3 blocks away from there, so.
You are correct.
Councilman Danforth?
Shane, the current system that's in place, the current pipe, whatever you want to call it, is that underneath the bridge now, aside the bridge? Is it on the, explain that, because
it's underneath the bridge, but I believe they must have modified their foundations to straddle it. And what they're telling us now is that the new bridge design, they don't plan on straddling it.
can they? I mean, why does the concept work all these years on this bridge and it won't work on a new bridge. I mean, isn't it possible that by modifying their plan, it would be quicker and cheaper overall than what I'm hearing we might not have to do on this thing?
You know, I can't answer that question.
We need to ask it.
Just a quick thing that I talked with the DOT about this, and he said that we're not actually hitting the pipe, but the pilings for the bridge that they have to put in is less than a foot away, and they will not be able to drill the pilings into as deep as they need to go without hitting that pipe and vibration, and that's the main concern.
We don't really have an option here, so I mean it's just information. So any questions before we move on? Yeah. Another here you go. Item number 9 is property easement acquisitions by South Dakota Department of Transportation for the Highway 212 Phase 1 project number 1802. Shane.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Here again, this is just informational. The DOT, along with this Phase 1 project, has been negotiating with all property owners along the corridor. The city is one of those property owners. This is Hampton Park, and the gray, it looks like gray here, but it's actually green hatched on the original drawing, is a easement. Then there's a portion, this little block out here, and a strip along the edge was proposed to be a taking. In other words, they would buy it from us. In this particular case, I believe that's dedicated park, and if that's the case, I will redirect them to do another easement rather than a taking, because we can't sell parkland without a referendum of the public, as I understand it. So we'll discuss that further with the DOT. Another property here is the swimming pool area and the Thunder Road. Those are permanent easements, again, because that's dedicated parkland, and I told them up front that we can't sell anything to you. We'll certainly give you an easement, and so that's what we negotiated there. Another parcel of land that the city owns is this drainage outlet right here. Again, there's some green easement, but there's also a little strip right in here that's hard to depict on these drawings that is a taking, and it's like 4 feet wide. It's nothing serious. The last parcel is the clock tower. Again, they have the hatched easement and about a 4-foot taking right there. And I guess I'm going to zoom in on that one just because it's got a little more detail of interest. But
Can I ask a question? And this might really be a stupid question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. But if we can't sell it, can we trade it? Can we barter?
actually, they are paying us for all of these parcels, whether it's easement or a taking. They're paying us money. That's driven by the use of federal money. They have to
Acquire
give you
it.
a fair market.
So in other words, if we give them the easement, they're going to give us dollars to acquire the easement.
Correct.
Do we know what those total dollars are?
I do. I didn't bring them to this presentation, but we do have those documents.
Where do those dollars go when we get those? Just out of curiosity.
Into the 212 fund?
Maybe they should go
Even
to
though it's
buying
not
light poles.
A second penny sales tax?
Well, I'm serious.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, it's the
I mean,
same road.
Yeah, it's the same project. It's
Mhm.
kind of a tit for tat thing that maybe. So, all right, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to bring that up as information because we are a property owner and we're being asked to convey land to the project.
Generally, they pay half for an easement that they would pay for an acquisition. So we'd get more money if we give the property rather than give them an easement. All right. Any questions or concerns for that with Shane? All right. Item number 10 is old business. Is there any old business? Is there any new business? No reason to go into executive session, so I'll look for a motion second to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Lawlem, second by Councilman Danforth. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. We are adjourned.